My family encouraged my fiancée to have an affair with my golden brother and canceled the wedding. 2 years ago, I, 35 meters, experienced what I can only describe as the most devastating day of my life. My fiancée Alexandra, 32F, called me an hour before our wedding to tell me she couldn't go through with it. The real bombshell? She had been seeing my brother Nathan, 40 meters, behind my back, and our parents had actually encouraged their relationship. You know those moments in movies where everything seems perfect right before it all falls apart? That was my life. I was a senior software developer at a growing tech company, making good money, had just bought a house in a nice suburb of Boston, and was about to marry the woman I thought was the love of my life. I had spent 5 years building a life with Alex, planning our future together, and believing we were on the same page about everything. I first met Alex at a tech conference where she was representing her company as a marketing executive. She was brilliant, ambitious, and had this way of lighting up any room she walked into. We clicked immediately over our shared love of indie games and obscure sci-fi movies. Our first date lasted 6 hours. We talked until the restaurant staff practically had to kick us out. Looking back now, I can see all the warning signs I chose to ignore because I was so in love with her. The first red flag should have been how she treated service workers. She was always polite on the surface, but there was this underlying condescension in her tone. Then there were the small lies, little things at first, like telling me she was working late when she was actually out with friends. She never apologized when she hurt my feelings, always insisted on getting her way, and had this uncanny ability to make everything about her needs. But I rationalized it all away, telling myself that nobody's perfect and that relationships require compromise. The dynamics in my family should have been another warning sign. I'm an IT professional, doing well enough but nothing extraordinary. My brother Nathan, on the other hand, is the golden child who can do no wrong. He's a successful entrepreneur who started his own tech company right out of college and turned it into a multi-million-dollar business by his early 30s. Growing up, everything was always, why can't you be more like Nathan, or Nathan would have done it this way. My parents, both in their 60s, never tried to hide their favoritism. I remember this one Christmas when I was 15. I had saved up all year to buy my parents a really nice coffee maker because their old one was falling apart. Nathan showed up late to Christmas dinner, handed them an envelope, and announced he had bought them a cruise. My carefully wrapped coffee maker sat forgotten under the tree while they spent the rest of the evening fawning over cruise brochures. That was just one instance of many. Every achievement of mine was measured against Nathan's success, every decision questioned because it wasn't what Nathan would have done. When I introduced Alex to my family, I should have noticed how her eyes lit up when Nathan talked about his business ventures. I should have seen how she gradually started positioning herself closer to him at family gatherings, how their conversations seemed to get longer and more intimate, but I was blind to it all, too caught up in wedding planning and our future together. The wedding day started like any other big day. I was nervous but excited. We had chosen this beautiful vineyard venue outside the city, with a view of the mountains that Alex had fallen in love with. Everything was ready: the flowers, the music, the carefully planned menu that had taken months to perfect. I remember standing in my hotel room that morning, adjusting my tie for the 100th time, when my phone rang. Alex's voice was cold, almost clinical, as she told me she couldn't marry me. She said she had found her true love with Nathan. She didn't even sound sorry about it, just said she had to follow her heart. I remember standing there, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone, as she explained how she and Nathan had been seeing each other for months, how they had tried to fight their feelings but couldn't, how she hoped I would understand someday. But here's the real kicker: when I got to the venue to start dealing with the fallout, I discovered my parents already knew. Nathan had told them that morning, and instead of warning me, they were trying to manage the situation to avoid embarrassment. My mother, Catherine, 62F, actually had the audacity to suggest that maybe it was for the best, that I wouldn't want to marry someone who doesn't love me. My father stood there nodding along, more concerned about what their golf club friends would think than about what his son was going through. The next few hours were a blur of canceled vendors, confused guests, and pitying looks. I remember my best man trying to handle the practical details while I sat in a back room, still in my wedding suit, trying to process how my entire life had imploded in the span of a morning. Some guests had already arrived, dressed in their finest, only to be told by my parents that there had been an unfortunate situation and the wedding was canceled. It wasn't until months later that I learned the full extent of their betrayal. Through a mutual friend, I found out that my parents had been actively encouraging Alex to leave me for Nathan. They had promised her financial support if she chose him over me, telling her she was too good for me and would have a better life with Nathan. They had been orchestrating this behind my back for months, all while smiling to my face and helping with wedding plans. The friend showed me text messages where my mother had actually arranged accidental meetings between Alex and Nathan, creating opportunities for them to spend time together. She had told Alex that Nathan had always had feelings for her, that they would make a more suitable match. My parents had even promised to help set Alex up with her own marketing consultancy if she chose Nathan, knowing her career ambitions were important to her. That day, I walked away from everything. I quit my job, moved to a different state, and cut all contact with my family. I changed my phone number, my email, everything. I left behind the house I had bought, letting the bank foreclose on it because I couldn't bear to live there with all the memories. I couldn't handle the pitying looks from colleagues who had been invited to the wedding, couldn't stand running into mutual friends who didn't know what to say to me. The only person I stayed in touch with was my therapist, who I started seeing to deal with the trauma of it all. She helped me understand that what I had experienced wasn't just a failed relationship, it was a profound betrayal by every person who was supposed to love and protect me. We worked through years of family dynamics that had led to this point, unpacking the ways my parents' favoritism had shaped my self-worth and relationships. The past 2 years haven't been easy, but they've been necessary. I found a new job at another tech company in Denver, rented a small apartment in a quiet neighborhood, and slowly started rebuilding my life. I made new friends through a local hiking group, people who knew nothing about my past and accepted me for who I am now. I focused on my mental health, started practicing meditation, and learned to be happy on my own. I even started dating again, cautiously. Nothing serious, just coffee meetings and casual dinners. Each date helped me realize that what happened with Alex wasn't about my worth as a person, it was about her character and my family's toxic dynamics. I learned to trust my instincts about people, to see red flags for what they are instead of making excuses for them. At work, I threw myself into new projects, earning a promotion and the respect of my colleagues. For the first time in my life, my achievements weren't being measured against Nathan's. I could just be myself, do my best work, and have it be enough. I made friends who valued me for who I am, not who they thought I should be. I thought I had finally put that chapter of my life behind me. I was doing well at work, had a solid group of friends, and was even thinking about buying a house again. I had created a new life for myself, one that was built on my terms, without the constant shadow of my family's expectations. Then, last week, Alex showed up at my door. Update 1. When I opened my door last week and found Alex standing there, I almost didn't recognize her. The polished, confident marketing executive I remembered was gone. In her place stood someone who looked like she hadn't slept properly in weeks. Her designer clothes had been replaced by a plain sweater and jeans, and her once perfect makeup couldn't hide the dark circles under her eyes. She was shaking when I let her in, not from the cold Denver evening, but from what I soon learned was constant anxiety. We sat in my living room, the same room where I've spent 2 years rebuilding my life, and she told me everything. Her marriage to Nathan had started like a fairy tale, just as my parents had promised. He bought her a house in the most expensive part of Boston, helped her start her own marketing consultancy, and showered her with expensive gifts. But the dream quickly turned into a nightmare. Nathan, it turns out, is exactly who I always suspected he was beneath his charming exterior. The successful, charismatic entrepreneur everyone admires is a master of manipulation behind closed doors. Alex described how he gradually took control of every aspect of her life. First, it was suggestions about her business decisions. Then it became demands about who she could work with. Eventually, he had positioned himself on her company's board and had final say over every contract. She told me about the gaslighting, how he would move things in their house and insist she had done it, how he would deny conversations they'd just hours before, how he would tell their friends she was becoming unstable whenever she tried to stand up to him. The worst part? Our parents, especially our mother Catherine, enabled everything. "Your mom," Alex said, wiping tears from her eyes, "she tells me I'm lucky to have Nathan, that I need to try harder to make him happy. When I told her about him threatening to take everything if I leave, she said that's just how successful men protect their interests." What broke my heart wasn't Alex's story, it was hearing about their son, my nephew, who's now caught in the middle of all this. He's only 18 months old, but Alex says Nathan is already showing the same controlling behavior with him. He has strict rules about everything, when the baby can sleep, what toys he can play with, even what colors he can wear. He gets angry if the baby cries during his important calls and blames Alex for not managing him properly. I asked about the possibility of divorce, and that's when she broke down completely. Nathan has made it clear that if she leaves, he'll destroy her. He has the money, the connections, and most importantly, the support of our parents. He's threatened to take full custody of their son, to bankrupt her with legal fees, to ensure she never works in marketing again. That's why she came to me. She needs someone who knows the truth about our family to testify in court, someone who can speak to the pattern of manipulation, to our parents' enabling behavior, to Nathan's true nature. She thinks my testimony could help her case, especially regarding custody. I said no. I didn't yell or argue, I just told her I couldn't help. The look on her face, I'll probably never forget it. But here's the thing, I spent 2 years in therapy learning that I'm not responsible for fixing other people's problems. I worked hard to build boundaries and create a life free from my family's toxic influence. The next day, my phone exploded with messages. Somehow, word had gotten out about Alex's visit. Former friends, people who hadn't spoken to me since the wedding disaster, suddenly had plenty to say. They called me heartless, selfish, a coward. Alex's former maid of honor sent me a particularly vicious message about how I was proving my family right, that I was too weak, too self-centered to step up when it matters. The hypocrisy is staggering. None of these people stood up for me 2 years ago. None of them called out my family's manipulation or offered support when I was the one hurting. But now they expect me to risk my mental health, my carefully rebuilt life, to help the woman who betrayed me? One message hit particularly hard. A mutual friend wrote, "There's an innocent child involved. Your nephew. Whatever Alex did to you, he doesn't deserve to suffer for it. And that's what's keeping me up at night. I keep thinking about that little boy. He didn't ask to be born into this mess. He didn't choose any of this. If what Alex says is true, and based on my experience with Nathan, I believe it is, he's growing up in a household that could scar him for life. I know what it's like to grow up under Nathan's shadow. Will his son have it even worse? But getting involved would mean letting my family back into my life. It would mean facing Nathan again, dealing with our parents' manipulation, potentially becoming the target of my brother's revenge. Everything I've built in the past 2 years could come crashing down. So I find myself at a crossroads. Do I maintain the boundaries I've worked so hard to establish, prioritizing my own mental health and stability? Or do I risk it all to help protect an innocent child from experiencing the same toxic family dynamics that damaged me? I honestly don't know what to do. My therapist says I need to think carefully about what I can realistically offer without compromising my own well-being. But every time I try to think it through logically, I see that little boy's face in my mind. Reddit, I need your perspective. Am I being selfish for refusing to help? Or am I right to protect the peace I finally found? And if there is a way to help my nephew without getting dragged back into the family drama, what would it look like? Update 2. It's been a week since my last update, and the situation has spiraled in ways I never expected. I thought ignoring everything would make it go away, but my family seems determined to drag me back into their chaos. Yesterday morning, I received an email from Nathan. Just seeing his name in my inbox made my stomach drop. The message was short but threatening. I heard our ex-fiancée came crying to you. Stay out of family matters if you know what's good for you. You've been out of the picture for 2 years, keep it that way. I stared at those words for a long time, feeling a mix of anger and, surprisingly, pity. The successful brother who has everything is so terrified of losing control that he's threatening his own sibling. The irony would be amusing if it wasn't so sad. But Nathan wasn't the only one who decided to break 2 years of silence. Catherine, our mother, called me at work. I should have ignored it, but some part of me still freezes when I see Mom on my caller ID. Her voice was sickly sweet, the same tone she used whenever she wanted to manipulate me as a kid. "Sweetheart, I know Alex came to see you," she started, not even bothering with a hello. "You need to understand that she's going through a difficult time, but that doesn't mean she's thinking clearly. Nathan is doing his best to be a good husband and father." When I didn't respond, she switched tactics. "Your brother's business is at a crucial point right now. This divorce nonsense could ruin everything he's built. Don't you think he deserves better from his own brother?" I finally found my voice. Like I deserved better from my own family? The silence on the other end was deafening. Then came the guilt trip. We've always wanted what's best for both our boys. Sometimes parents make mistakes, but family has to stick together. "Nathan needs you to be the bigger person right now." I hung up. Minutes later, my phone started buzzing with texts from extended family members. Apparently, Catherine had mobilized the entire family network. Aunts, uncles, cousins, people who hadn't bothered to check on me after the wedding disaster, were suddenly very concerned about family unity. One cousin wrote, "Your parents aren't getting any younger. Do you want them to spend their remaining years worried about their grandchild growing up in a broken home?" Another messaged, "Real men don't hold grudges. Be the bigger person." The most infuriating message came from my father's sister. "Your brother made a mistake, but he gave Alex everything she wanted. She's just being ungrateful, and you're enabling her behavior." It's fascinating how they've constructed this narrative where I'm the villain for not helping to maintain their perfect family facade. They're so invested in the image of Nathan as the successful son that they'll ignore any evidence of his abusive behavior. Then tonight, something happened that really shook me. A former colleague who still works with Nathan reached out. He said he'd witnessed some disturbing incidents at the office, Nathan having explosive outbursts at employees, making veiled threats, manipulating financial records. According to him, several employees have quit due to the toxic work environment, but Nathan's lawyers have them tied up in NDAs. This colleague suggested that if I were to help Alex, there might be others willing to come forward about Nathan's behavior. But he also warned me that Nathan has been making inquiries about my new life in Denver, including my workplace and address. The threat is clear. If I help Alex, Nathan will come after my new life. He has the resources to make things very difficult for me, both professionally and personally. And our parents would support him, just like they always have. I've worked too hard to build this peaceful existence. My job is going well. I have real friends who accept me for who I am, and my therapist says I've made incredible progress in setting healthy boundaries. The thought of losing all of that terrifies me, but I keep thinking about my colleague's words about other potential witnesses. If what he says is true, this isn't just about Alex and my nephew anymore. There could be dozens of people suffering under Nathan's abuse of power. I've started documenting everything: the threatening email, the manipulative phone call, the flying monkey attacks from relatives. My therapist suggests this might be important, though she reminds me that I'm not obligated to set myself on fire to keep others warm. The question now isn't just whether to help Alex, it's whether I have a moral obligation to expose Nathan's behavior before he hurts more people. But am I ready for the storm that would bring? I need advice. Reddit. How do you stand up to someone who has all the power, money, and family support on their side? And is it worth risking everything I've rebuilt to do the right thing? Update 3. After my last update, I spent several sleepless nights wrestling with what to do. The situation has resolved itself, though not in the way anyone expected. I want to share the full story of what happened and why I made the choices I did. First, I need to explain something important. After receiving Nathan's threatening email and Catherine's manipulative call, I had a breakthrough session with my therapist. We discussed how my family's pattern has always been the same: create a crisis, pressure me to fix it, then use my help to maintain their toxic system. She helped me realize that any direct involvement would just perpetuate this cycle. However, she also pointed out something crucial: there are ways to help that don't require me to sacrifice my mental health or re-engage with my family's manipulation. That's when I made my decision. I filed a detailed anonymous report with Child Protective Services. This wasn't a decision I made lightly. I spent 3 days gathering every piece of information I had: text messages, emails, the threatening letter from Nathan, screenshots of the family's harassing messages. I included everything Alex had told me about Nathan's controlling behavior toward their son. I detailed our family's history of enabling abusive behavior and covering up problems to maintain appearances. The report wasn't just about the current situation. I provided context about Nathan's pattern of manipulation and how our parents have historically enabled his behavior. I included specific examples: how they covered up his drunk driving behavior. I included specific examples: how they covered up his drunk driving behavior. I included specific examples: how they covered up his drunk driving incident in college, how they paid off a former employee who threatened to sue for harassment, how they've consistently used their money and influence to protect him from consequences. I also forwarded evidence of potential financial irregularities that my former colleague had mentioned. While this might not directly impact the CPS investigation, I felt it painted a fuller picture of Nathan's character and the extent of his manipulation. The hardest part was waiting. CPS investigations take time, and as an anonymous reporter, I knew I wouldn't get updates about their progress. But at least I had done something that could potentially help my nephew while maintaining my own boundaries. Then things started happening faster than I expected. 3 days after I filed the report, I received a barrage of furious messages from Nathan. His emails became increasingly unhinged. "You think you can hide behind anonymity? I know it was you. You've just made the biggest mistake of your life. I'll make sure you never work in tech again. You think you're safe in Denver? Watch your back. You're dead to this family. Remember that you chose this." Catherine's response was different but equally telling. She left a voicemail that still haunts me. "How could you do this to your own family? We gave you everything, and this is how you repay us?" Nathan is devastated. They're investigating him like a common criminal. His reputation could be ruined. I hope you're happy with yourself. The interesting thing? Neither of them denied any of the allegations. Their anger wasn't about false accusations, it was about me daring to expose the truth. My father, who had remained largely silent throughout this ordeal, finally showed his true colors. He had his lawyer send me a letter threatening to cut me out of his will if I didn't fix this situation immediately. The irony of threatening to disown someone who already walked away from the family wasn't lost on me. Then came an unexpected message from Alex. Unlike the others, hers was short and carried a different tone. "I know it was you. Thank you. I'm sorry for everything." Those 9 words hit me harder than all of Nathan's threats combined. They represented the first genuine acknowledgement of wrongdoing I'd received from anyone involved in this mess. Through the grapevine, I heard that CPS's involvement had given Alex the leverage she needed. With an active investigation ongoing, Nathan's threats of taking full custody held less weight. She was able to secure emergency temporary custody of their son while the investigation proceeds. The family distant relatives I haven't spoken to in years are flooding my inbox with messages about how I've destroyed the family and betrayed my own blood. Former family friends are posting vaguely worded sympathy messages on social media about how sad it is when jealousy tears families apart. But here's the thing. Their reactions don't affect me the way they once would have. 2 years of therapy and self-work have given me a clarity I never had before. I can see their manipulation tactics for what they are. Every guilt trip, every threat, every attempt to make me question my decision just confirms that I made the right choice. My therapist pointed out something profound. My family isn't angry because I hurt them. They're angry because I refuse to play my assigned role in their dysfunction. By choosing to protect my nephew through official channels rather than participating in their cover-up, I broke the pattern that they've relied on for decades. The aftermath has been intense but clarifying. I've had to take several precautions in response to the situation. First, I informed my company's security team about potential harassment, ensuring they were aware of possible threats. I also began working with a lawyer to protect myself from any potential retaliation. Given the circumstances, I've had to strengthen my personal security measures and make my social media presence completely private. These weren't steps I wanted to take, but they were necessary for my safety and peace of mind. But I've also experienced unexpected support. Several cousins who'd always kept quiet have reached out privately to say they're proud of me for standing up to the family. 2 of Nathan's former employees have contacted me about providing statements to support Alex's case. Even some old friends who initially criticized my decision have come around after hearing the full story. Most importantly, I feel at peace with my decision. Yes, there might be consequences. Nathan might try to harm my career. The family might follow through on their threats. But for the first time in my life, I'm not making decisions based on fear of their reactions. To the person who messaged me saying I'm taking the coward's way out by reporting anonymously instead of confronting Nathan directly, you're missing the point. This wasn't about revenge or confrontation. It was about finding a way to help that didn't require me to sacrifice my own mental health or get drawn back into their toxic dynamic. I don't know what will happen next. CPS investigations can take many turns, and custody battles can drag on for months or years. But I do know this. I did what I could to protect an innocent child while maintaining my own boundaries. I found a way to help that didn't require me to set myself on fire to keep others warm. To everyone who's been following this story and offering advice, thank you. Your support helped me see that sometimes the right thing isn't the most dramatic or confrontational option. Sometimes it's about finding a way to effect change while protecting yourself. For those who might be in similar situations, remember this. You don't have to choose between helping others and protecting yourself. There's often a middle path, even if it's not immediately obvious.